Greetings, my wonderful students. Today we begin our review of the Middle Ages in Europe, Part 2. The manor system was an economic system of the Middle Ages. A lord would let serfs, or peasants, farm the land, and he, the lord, would receive a share of the crops. Basically, the peasants were paying rent with their labor, with the crops that they grew. The lord agreed to protect the serfs from any attacks. And manors made almost everything they needed. They were self-sufficient. Think small enclosed communities. Now, your social class was determined by birth. If you were born a serf, you're going to die a serf. Nobles were considered better than commoners and had special privileges. This is obviously very different from what we believe today, that all people should be treated equally. The more land a noble had, the more important he was, because land meant wealth, and wealth meant power. Now, trade first revives in Italy. The Italian city-states began to establish trade routes with Constantinople, Syria, Palestine, and North Africa. A group of northern German cities formed a trading alliance called the Hanseatic League. So as you can see here, the trade routes established first again over water routes, because recall, water travel is far faster than land travel at this time. Goods would travel from ports inland by pack train, basically large groups of animals with saddlebags full of goods, sometimes also carts. The barter economy began to be replaced with a money economy. So as trade grows, this new revolution in commerce, the commercial revolution, starts. Money changers, people who would exchange one type of currency for another, such as today you might exchange US currency for Canadian currency. Money changers began to do more business. And as they had money on hand, they began to lend money. And they began to use letters of credit, which is kind of basically like a checking system, to transfer money from one city to another, from one person to another. This is basically the beginning of the banking system. People became wealthy and invested money in businesses. With investing, money lending, and producing, a market economy began to emerge. So what you were seeing at this time is individuals would have some extra money on hand, or they would pool their money together with a group of people, and they would buy, say, a ship, or invest in a business that owns ships and is trading goods from the Middle East to Europe. People would invest money in a business, like it was just stating, and they would take part of the profits. They would have a share of the profits, and these people would be stockholders or shareholders. Now, inside towns, guilds formed and regulated hours and working conditions. Now, what a guild would be an association of all, say, the shoemakers in a town, and that would be the Shoemakers Guild, or all the barrel makers in a town, and that would be the Barrel Makers Guild. They would regulate the hours and working conditions of their industry, whether it was making shoes, and then you would start off as an apprentice at a very young age, 5, 7, 8 years old. Then you would start to learn the basics, and then you would work up to finally becoming a master. So you'd become an apprentice, and then as years pass, you would become a journeyman, and then after that you would become a master, and then be able to open up your own business. Now, the towns were dirty and unsanitary. That wasn't really a good way of getting rid of waste or garbage, and as a result, there was a lot of vermin, rats in particular. With the increase of trade, the plague came from Asia. Fleas that lived on the rats fed on the garbage that was in the streets. And so because the humans are so close to the rats, because the rats are just part of everyday life, when the rats start to die off from the plague, the fleas leave the rats, they jump on the humans, they bite the humans, and they give the humans the plague. The Black Deaths spread in waves, killing 1/3 of Europe. Some people even say it was high as 40%. Now, society began to collapse because of the hysteria surrounding the plague. People abandoned their own family members who were infected. Now, some people stayed and nursed the sick. Many of them also became sick themselves because people really didn't understand how diseases worked back then. Other people threw themselves into the moment believing they were going to die at any point. Now, when this was over, the loss of life created a labor shortage. Remember, so many people back at this time were farmers, serfs, and peasants. So, because most of the people were farmers, most of the people who died were farmers, which meant there weren't enough farmers, there weren't enough workers to build things anymore. This labor shortage contributes to the decline of serfdom, because with so many farmers dying, so many serfs dying, they now had more power, they were more valuable, and they could bargain for their freedom. With the collapse of the Roman Empire in the West, the Christian church split into two sections. The Western church became known as Roman Catholic, with the Pope as its head, and the Eastern half became the Eastern Orthodox under the control of the Patriarch of Constantinople. The Roman Catholic Church connected the different kingdoms of Western Europe through their common religion. Remember, the church even created rules, canon law is what it was called, to enforce over its own people. The church was a source of stability in a time of chaos. Now, many people began to resent church interference in people's lives. Some people felt the church was too focused on power and money and not focused enough on saving people's souls. And some high-ranking officials in the church even took bribes. Many high-ranking officials lived in luxury from the money the church received. This is going to lead to a questioning of the church and criticisms of the church that will eventually lead to the Protestant Reformation, which we will be talking about in the next chapter.